Wind down our little music here. Anytime today, I know if you're stressed out, this is a good chance to take some time out, put your favorite music on. So excited to be here with you today. So I always like to start every session. We've been doing this since April with just sending my love and care for all of you on the call today. This last 3 months has been very overwhelming for all of us, but especially you. And in this week, as kind of the world has woken up to a fight that you have been fighting your whole life, I hope that you have found a space and place for yourself to not only just kind of be present with your emotions, but also define the outlets and actions you want to take at this time. And I just wanted to say that hopefully today and with your summer program, that I can give you an opportunity to say that this might be your outlet, this might be your passion, because you have always been, like I said, in this fight. But more importantly, I know many of you, and many of you have dedicated decades of your life to working with teens. And I know for a fact that every one of you has refused to let discrimination and racism, whether it's interpersonal or whether it's systemic, that you have maintained and fought for the dignity and the dreams of your young people. So I wanted to just dedicate the session today to you and to all the dreams that you have actually saved in your career and in your lifetime, to make sure that we have a moment where every single one of our young people can dare to dream. And in that, I wanted just to be a chance for us to have a little bit of a moment. Sometimes when we switch gears and enter into a new space, that we're carrying kind of a lot of that stress. And often we found that the stress creates a barrier for us to kind of see our own power and to see the creative opportunities that we have within us and around us. So earlier this summer, we asked this incredible poet, Leslie Honoré, who is a fearless youth worker, activist, and fighter for young people and for her community, to actually write a poem for you. This actually was written before this week because we've always believed that your essentialness has been absolutely critical to every single opportunity in Chicago for young people, and that you have been on the front lines for equity, and we just wanted to honor that. And I'm going to, if you want, you can turn up the volume on your computer. I have my volume up. But since you're not on video, if you just want to take this moment, even for yourself, to close your eyes, to treat this as a little bit of a meditation, just to get you centered for the day. Or maybe you're excited to kind of use this as a way to charge yourself up today. Whatever your space is, whatever your emotion is, this is for you.
Saving summer. You don't make jobs, you make pathways. You clear the overgrown racism that blocks the stepping stones. You jump into the canyon-wide divisions and fill them with your own determination so that others may walk across. You be more than a bridge. You be continuous connection between dreams and reality. You don't let the violence stop you, or the lack of money, or one more funder's labyrinth of hoops, or peers who tell you to give up, or a city's neglect, or a nation's generational hate. You be more than superhero, more than essential. You lift the weight of stereotypes and food deserts, school closures, invisible resources, segregation, slavery's legacy, and you pull it up and over, deadlift it, slam it back on the ground, whisper in its ear, not today, not on my watch, not with these kids. You be more than flexible, more than adaptive, more than a marvel. You won't be defeated by an epidemic. You haven't lost to racism that's systemic. You will put your mask on like all superheroes do and fight. You be hope dealer. You believe for non-believers. You don't do jobs, you do passions. You do art, you do music, you do dance, you do the best of us. You be dream catching, you be mustard seed strong. Saving summer is a lilac scented breeze because you save lives all year long.
So I wanted to say, as we join here together and we're mourning the lives that were lost to racism and discrimination, I want to recognize you today, though, for all of the lives, like Leslie said, all of the lives that you've saved this year and in your lifetime, and all of the lives that you will save this summer and all the hopes and the dreams and the aspirations that you will fuel, that will create a new generation, and each generation taking us closer and closer to where we want to be. So I hope today we've created a journey for you that will allow you to see that hope and that possibility in ways that feel really authentic to you, because your dreams, like I said, and the dreams of young people are utmost important to us right now. So I wanted to highlight a little bit of kind of why we launched this program. We've talked a little bit about it already on our call today, but summer has always been one of the most important critical milestones for young people. No matter what age you are, summer has been a place where you've made incredible new friends, you've found passions in your life, you found the interests that drive you to make all of your kind of career choices and life choices. But also it's a chance to actually have an incredible relationship with you. Every person on this call, when you're involved in a program, is showing young people how much they're loved and how much they're cared for. That they're learning to have these incredible lifelong friendships that can help them through mentoring and through their peers. So when other cities started canceling their summer programs, we knew that the young people of Chicago needed us now more than ever. And we wanted to give you, like I said, a pathway where you could take your dreams and aspirations and channel them through just really simple program designs that would allow you to keep your summer alive. And obviously you wouldn't be here today if that wasn't a dream and passion of yourself. I also just want to highlight that thanks to funding, because of the massive response we've had to our trainings, MHA is finally positioned to expand its team. And I wanted to introduce you to some of these folks because they're going to be spending all summer with you. Terrence and Stephen are incredible, incredible youth leaders and trainers. And they're also both have a strong background in doing racial healing and transformation. We've already asked them if they would extend that program and actually launch a new institute that we're helping to support and fund to ensure that every single young person has an opportunity to process all the events of this week and of their lifetime, heal from that trauma, and then channel that to activism in their own opportunity in their own communities. And then Cassandra, we'd like to welcome. We actually met her through another youth worker who is coming on to be our manager of content and community. So she'll be working with you to bring resources. She is online right now, actually trying to find resources that really support just this week in this moment in time. We'll be adding to this as we go. So I wanted to say, even in our own commitment at MHA, we've always ensured that as soon as we ever got funding, that we would diversify, because I know my own limitations that I bring to the table. And as you saw when you came in, this is a webinar format. So there's no video and no kind of live unmuting, but it does not mean I don't want to actually just really strongly communicate with you. So we'll be using the chat mainly today. And there's ways to do that. You can set it to all panelists and attendees. And at any point along the whole entire webinar, we're going to take questions at the end, because it's kind of hard for me. I want to really live in the moment, and it's hard to kind of constantly switch gears. So if you put a question mark, I promise we'll get to it at the end. If we don't, just so you know, we're offering coaching sessions. So if your question's a little more meatier, or it's a lot more personal, like you really want advice on your own program, you may have heard that we are offering, and I sent you a link already in your email, we are offering one-on-one coaching to anybody in the city who reaches out. And I'm trying to make sure we have not turned a single person down. And then there's going to be one icebreaker prompt that's coming up. It is really, really simple. I'm just going to ask at least one person on this entire call, there's 43 people here, to post one idea in the chat. It's a great way to share, and it'll help me kind of show a lot of innovation for you. So I'm always got that one person who's going to hook me up. So as you may have seen when you were signing up, there's two parts to the Let's Save Summer kind of core program design training. And a lot of it was designed for what level of modeling that you're at. So part one, we know that creativity actually is developed and fostered inside design conditions. So whether you're building a new app, iPhone, or whether you're building a new program, there's always boundaries and limitations to design. So with COVID, we just realized that there were new boundaries to that design, but that does not mean we have to give up on creative programming. So this whole first session is going to show you and kind of unlock ways that you can think about how to do remote learning and not just be online all day taking kind of online classes. Kind of like today, right? But today is really our journey together. So when you're learning new information, sometimes it actually helps to just like let go, know you don't have to engage and participate, lie back and listen, and then we'll activate all of your ideas through the coaching session. So it's broken down into two sections. And actually, when we think about this week, right, this idea is that when we become too hopeful and we see kind of all these platitudes online, it it actually always doesn't make us feel good, right? It doesn't automatically make us think that everything's going to change in the world. But we realize when it's actually grounded in the reality of our times and the reality of the conditions, it actually creates a sense of sanity. So this session, the first part is going to be about getting you to believe that your program can be extraordinary this summer. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the conditions that could make that hard, but we just want to work to overcome the conditions. Just like for social change, we don't let the conditions destroy our ability to make change. We use them, we challenge them, we unpack them, and we navigate around them. So that's what we're going to be doing today. But I always like to start with the belief. So we're going to do a little bit of it's kind of like an icebreaker, but it's also going to be one of the most extraordinary ways for you to think about how to drive your program this summer. Because all great things start with, what am I good at? What do I love to do? Pretty much everything in life is my passion and my skills, and that's kind of MHA's motto. So in the chat, like I might mention, there's one person I would love to add one thing here. I'm going to be monitoring it until someone says something. Is right now, for many of you who are at home, and this one, it says you're performing better at home than you did at the office, but you also might be performing something in the kind of activist movement this week that has really brought you to life. So I want you to describe one task, one thing you're doing that you're performing better at home than you may have done at work. Maybe post that in the chat. And then maybe one hobby that you've been engaging at home. So sometimes people at work, it's just like, it just kind of sucks all around. And I'm just not feeling good about it. But I've started cooking, I've started gardening, I've started doing something else. Then we're going to show you a little parlor trick. And this is something we've been doing a lot on the coaching, so I wanted to share that with you. So love it. First one is we're going to talk about is building stronger bonds with youth. So one, thank you so much, Erica, for sharing that. So maybe you're thinking, how would I turn that into a program? I mean, obviously my own program is going to be about building strong bonds with young people. But here's the thing is that if you're really good at that, that actually means that's a skill that you can teach other people, not just be present with young people. So one of the things that we've been talking a lot about, and we're actually going to be funding and supporting for the racial transformation work, is when I was in high school, peer counseling was a really, really big thing. I don't know if they just trusted us more back then, but they actually trusted us to be junior counselors with programming. Maybe this summer, because of COVID and discrimination and all of the issues that are arising from health disparities to economic issues, I mean, it's struggling times. What if you took a cohort of your program and asked for young people kind of what their background is, what are their passions, do you like helping people? Maybe you take your skill set at engaging with young people and actually transform that into an entire internship around peer counseling. I can promise you that if you went online now and looked up peer counseling curriculum materials, you would find hundreds of really well-designed resources, because that's been a program that's been happening for ages. That's just one way you can take this one thing that you are doing and use that as a basis for an entire program design. Because when you are good at something, it is much easier to actually build and design and lead a whole program around it. The hardest is when you're trying to do something new. That's why new teachers have a really hard time. So if you're a new staff person this summer and you're really struggling because they gave you a program design, maybe you're like, hey, how do I weave in what I'm really good at this? Let's think about another one. Love it, trying different recipes, staying focused in DIY home decor. I'm gonna put those together. So let's think about this. So young people with a stay-at-home order, and if you are working in a DFSS program, regardless of that, you are required to do your first 4 weeks virtual. So imagine if your young person was basically the home director, right? Maybe they could be an executive chef. Maybe they're your home's interior designer. So these are two pathways you could think about, and you could even join them. Is one, I imagine right now, families are just struggling to balance home and work and schooling and all of those issues. Imagine if you have a young person, and many of you, my mom's philosophy is that once you can reach the counter, you're cooking for yourself. So maybe young people are given the opportunity to really learn how to be a home executive chef. And many of you have budgets that were released because you're not paying for transportation, or maybe you had a food budget. One idea that's going to come up later is that you can send a food kit of dry materials, beans and rice and all these other things, and have young people, maybe they just do one meal a day as a pop-up activity that's just part of your leadership development. Maybe they're doing an entire culinary program. And one of the things that was asked was, well, how do I know if the food's any good? You know, if I'm in a culinary program, that's really important. So we thought, hey, why not just let families rate the quality of the food? You can make a little survey. Was this too salty? Was it flavorful? And then what you're doing online is really talking about plating and other issues. Maybe you're actually like watching young people as they're dicing, making sure they're the right sizes. So there's a lot of ways to kind of work around things that we thought were not possible. And certainly for DIY home decor, we know that Joanne Fabrics was actually really active about, I mean, I don't know if they did it for business, but about making masks. But I bet you could order, even IKEA actually has great fabric online. You could teach a whole hand sewing program where young people are actually redecorating their homes to make it more positive. And if we are at stay at home for much longer, how great would it be for young people to learn entire interior design? They can make Pinterest boards. But again, taking what you love and turning it into a program can be very powerful, because also facilitating on Zoom or on a platform is really hard. Now, I love all of you. Many of you know that MHA was really invented because we love the youth workers who are helping young people. So as much as I get nervous, it is much easier for me to bring this passion online because I really, really care about you and I really care about the work. So if you design a program about something you love, you will naturally exude that authenticity online. But this is just a way to say, ways to come up with ideas. If you feel adventurous, you can actually just do the same activity with your young people and say, what are you enjoying at home? And maybe have independent projects, or maybe design a whole program around what young people are doing. And this is a great time to kind of introduce that whole youth voice perspective. This is just one fun activity you can do. It's a good icebreaker also to do with your staff if you're trying to get them to feel empowered about what's going on at home. So here's our agenda for today. So today is really about models. Now, many of you know those little Russian nesting dolls, right? You start with big, and then you open it up, you get smaller. So our goal is to get you to the smallest 6-week unit of opportunity that is most viable and most appealing to you. And so we're gonna walk through that today. This afternoon, we're gonna take you through activity planning templates. So we actually just looked at kind of what are the natural ways that internships and enrichment programs really look in the summer. And what are some models that we could start to kind of standardize, not standardization, but just say there actually was 3 models that seem to kind of relate to what most people were doing. And we wrote 6-week plans. And then we have kind of positive youth development practices that we've been working on for 10 years that we know unlock incredible opportunities for young people, but that sense of skill building, that sense of purpose. Lastly, highlighting again, individual coaching. This is what typically happens on a call. So we had a great partner the other day who was saying, they're working on, she was so amazing. One of the ideas was doing CPR. Like, well, how do we turn CPR into a whole kind of inspiring program? So we started talking about this idea about life-saving. That CPR is about jumping in the moment of a crisis and saving someone's life. But so do the interrupters when they actually go in and intervene with violence on the street. So there's so many jobs that actually relate to being ready at that moment with the skills to save someone's life. So now young people talking about what kind of life-saving do they want to do? So often maybe you just start with an idea. We can really help you take it all the way through to that, and literally often just one session, because the reality is you have it in you to be that creative. Sometimes you just need to have that unlocked with a nice coach. Okay, so one of the other things we were talking with people was, youth workers have incredibly high expectations, not just for their young people, but for themselves, right? So you've aspired to figure out, how do I make this amazing program? And I think a lot of people were worried, like, I'm not gonna be able to get them that full engineering experience. I'm not gonna be able to get them that full kind of STEM, kind of computer science experience. But all along, when we think about what do young people really need to grow up and feel like powerful young people who can take on the world and fight for their rights and opportunities, we actually sat back and said, what are those 4 things that we want to manifest young people with when they leave? Now, the narrative, certainly for the last 20 years, has been somehow that got determined that was English language arts and math literacy. That somehow the entire world is based on your ability to do critical analysis of text and do advanced algebra. So we're not, as youth workers, we're not really totally sold that was all it was, because it's just not true. So what we realized was that people need a mastered skill set. Now, a mathematician might need to master math. A writer might need to master the complexity of English language arts. But there are hundreds and hundreds of skill sets. And actually, there's a whole database called ONET run by the government that tells you exactly the skills for hundreds and maybe thousands of jobs. But the idea is that when you feel like you have mastered a skill set, you have that confidence, that energy, that power, and that passion, it gives you that chance to move forward. So our idea this summer is that what if you just help young people master one skill? Instead of pretend, like, what would that feel like to come out of this summer and say, I mastered this skill and I can prove that I did it? can be credible. Which leads into that idea of a strong identity. Is that when you think about this 6 weeks of developmental time, is also coming in the most critical window of youth development, where young people are forming their identity, their racial identity, their gender identity, their sexual orientation identity, all of these cultural identities. Who do they want to be? Where do they want to go? How do they want to interact with the world? It's making space for that. So when I have my strong skills and I have a strong sense of who I am, I can apply that to a sense of purpose. So thinking and questioning, especially now, what is my role in this life? What is my role in my community? Now, often we think about purpose as being something way into the future for a young person. We ask that each one of you think about in your program, what is their role and purpose right now in this moment in time? We know absolutely for teenagers that the inability to apply what they're caring about and knowing right now feels incredibly frustrating, and we saw that this week. Is that finding a way to take that purpose and put that into action, which takes us to our last piece, which is giving a strong sense of critical consciousness. Now, this is for everybody, regardless of your race, because if you are living, I should say not regardless of your race, that many people think this is the sole responsibility of Black and Brown and Asian young people to navigate their own path to equal opportunity and to dignity and equity. It is just as critical for all of us in this call and in this city to be thinking about this issues we are facing through a complex lens of critical consciousness. As some people call this civics. The civics often is just limiting to the idea of voting. And we know from our numbers that voting is not always going to be enough. We saw that in our last election. So how do we help young people really dig in and analyze these issues? But also, how do we as adults really unpack them for ourselves and be present for our young people? And that is where we really wanted to include Terrence and Stephen to build kind of a whole entire pool of people who can help facilitate those conversations. So hopefully when you just heard this little bit up front, that you're starting to realize that just because of COVID does not mean you have to give up all of these aspirational goals. That the rest is going to be this kind of practical and positive ways to approach this. I'm just going to keep looking over a little bit to the chat to make sure there's no urgent questions. Looks like we're good to move on. Okay, so now we're going to look at internship and program design models. So in MHA world, we do not distinguish between a really good internship and a really good enrichment program. The design of those programs is identical. Because often at work, you are with a cohort of 20 coworkers with maybe one supervisor. Enrichment is often a program with one supervisor to 20 young people. But the rigor, the engagement, the positive youth development, we think of those as interchangeable. So as we're going through this, sometimes I might default to one term or another, but just know that every single thing we've shown is the exact same. In typical MHA training, we'll have teachers, employers, we'll have youth workers, we'll have kindergarten instructors, that it's always the same because, to be honest, what it takes to become great at something, what it takes to grow up, prior to about 200 years ago, was just led by communities and modeling and supporting and applying and following adults around. This idea that it has to be overly institutionalized is just really not the way that humans really grow. So we're going to start with just 3 themes to get us kicked off. Why activity design? So I've always been kind of a nerd, and I like designing, and I like strategy, and I like flowcharts. So for me, program design was always straightforward. But also what we found, not surprising, is that all the research on goal planning shows that you're much more likely to achieve your goals. So for everybody, having some level of design and documentation has always freed you up to be powerful in a space. Even if you're working from your gut, you may not realize that you probably have a really comprehensive model in your head, it's just not written down. But here's the thing. It is incredibly hard to sustain this level of gut-driven energy and gut-driven programming online. That often when you're in a room, you're like riffing and you're vibing off what people are doing, you're kind of watching, you're pulling people out of a room. That's just not as possible. So now we just think that the activity is going to have to carry more of the weight this summer than maybe your own kind of instructional style. So maybe for the first time, you really have to really dig in to your program design. That's not going to be a bad idea because we found that almost every coaching call, that every program design that people have developed is absolutely an advancement and functional when actually the COVID lifts and you don't have to be remote. So maybe it was the flow. Maybe the first time you used to do 2 weeks of instruction and then you would do applied learning, and we switched it up. So I don't want you to think that investing is just like a short-term goal for the next 6 weeks, because that wouldn't be a great use of time. Next thing I want you to remember, and this is just like, if this is where your head went, I want you to break this code right now. Call it like a brain interrupter. Going remote does not mean doing everything online. Becky, if you want to put your question in, I saw you raise your hand in the chat. I can grab it. If it's urgent, if not, I can get back to it. Sorry about that. Is that, like I said, going remote does not mean doing everything online. Here's this beautiful young man from last summer that we took a picture of. He is sitting in a park, perfectly social distance. He could be doing one of 20 activities on that sheet of paper. He could be modeling a web page. He could be doing an architectural rendering. You know, one of the most incredible things that young people could start doing immediately this summer is actually helping design the economic redevelopment of streets that were actually hit by voting, right? So this idea about what could they be doing that's not locked on a computer all day? Maybe they're doing artwork. So for young people who've been online in school the last 3 months, I want to encourage you to think about breaking that habit of thinking it all has to be online. So the next idea is around youth skills and interests. So I've been talking a lot about that kind of earlier. What I'm good at, what I'm passionate about are usually the two drivers of your life. So this summer, often we think about our summer programs as a place that we want to grow new skills, which is great, but it's going to be kind of difficult to have that much hands-on kind of learning and instruction. We realize though, which is just like work, right? When you got hired for your job, you actually had some skills ahead of time and it made you better at your job. It made you allowed to work independently. I mean, your supervisor is not coaching you for a whole 6 weeks. Is that if your young people already have a set of skills, maybe you know this, but we're going to show you how to do a little intake, is that maybe if they already if you had like 20 young people who already knew Photoshop, like, wait, if I actually launch a graphic design program, I wouldn't even have to teach that because my young people already know how to do that. The second thing is if they are super, super passionate about it, everyone's like, well, how do I keep them engaged throughout the summer? When you are in your flow and you're really passionate about something, you just want to be there. You do the work. If you are an artist and I ask you to make a painting this week and spend 20 hours on it, you're going to be like, great, love it. I'm so glad I have 20 hours to work on my painting. I'm usually rushing. Well, usually also falls apart in the real world, but definitely online, is that if I don't have the skills and I'm not remotely interested in it, I mean, you're never going to be engaged. Before you were just in a physical space, so you kind of had to force to be there. But now you can just wake up and be like, I'm not into it, and you're not even logging on. So when you hear these kind of horror stories about young people at CPS kind of not participating, let's be honest, if you hated math in person, you're not going to love it more online. And when they said that all you had to do is a minimum to pass, I don't want you to interpret all of these kind of horror stories that happened in the school because your program is totally different. Young people signed up to be part of summer. They signed up to want to spend time with you. Completely different. Okay. So this is the start of our kind of modeling. So we talked about that kind of Russian nesting dolls, right? So when we started the summer, we started this right in early April. We're like, oh, maybe they'll be normal. Nah, not happening. Now, the rules are changing kind of daily, right? With the opening and the kind of closing, we don't know if there's going to be resurgence. So we have been recommending that people plan almost solely for remote for all their activity designs. Because it is super easy if you are doing a coding program where young kids are actually sitting at home on a computer to just move them back. If they're doing an arts program, moving them back into a studio from a house is not that hard. But if you have to switch to remote last minute, they're not going to have the supplies and not going to have the resources. And let's just say, you know, at some point midsummer, they actually say with social distancing, you can bring some people back together. I think now it's like 10 people. Even 10 people, 6 feet apart, you could be up to 3 feet wide. You need a lot of space. It's not that intimate, right? And you got to like map it out on the grass even, you got to put signs down. So what we recommended was maybe just rotate, you know, 4 young people through. Maybe that time to have that really deep kind of interpersonal conversations and the coaching and kind of some of those more smaller group things that you've actually always wanted to do. Even on Zoom, we noticed that when you do a breakout of 4 people, it's exponentially better. And like right now, there's no way we could have an open, you know, conversation and planning with 49 people. But you can actually learn on a webinar with 49 people. And then I would break up. That's how we started coaching. That's how I solved for this problem. And then, of course, you just always want to make sure that your families are also supported. So even though it might be legal, you know, maybe parents are really worried about their young people coming out this summer. So I think just being sensitive to that and that you might always want to have one at least remote program, 100%, for people who just don't feel comfortable. That's just kind of, so we have our first meeting, we're going to plan all for remote, but again, not all online, which takes us to our next set of models. So one, I just want to ground this in a little bit of reality for you. For those of you who were doing work sites, we did a study of employers, and on average, young people were only getting 2 hours of supervision a week. I actually give my intern now way more than those 2 hours because I feel overly sensitive and overly committed to making sure that she doesn't feel isolated. But normally when they were on a job, they were often given a set of tasks and they were working independently on site. So don't think that your young people were getting these like 20 hours of supervision and you'll never be able to replicate that. The key is that the clarity of the activity is straightforward. And again, enrichment, almost every enrichment program, no matter what it was, had key components that gravitate naturally to a remote environment or capable of doing it in remote. So often we just said, well, you know, these 2 things are probably just not feasible, but these 4 things are incredible. You can absolutely do those at home or remotely. So a lot of this is just kind of unpacking what you're doing and making that transition. Okay, so we're all remote. We're kind of grounded in our reality. We have 3 remote models for us to play with today. And I'm going to show you what the 3 are, and then we're going to go through a lot of creative ideation. When we get to the idea sides, feel free to jump in on the chat if you have an inspired idea or you already have a great idea you want to share. Feel free to post them. And what we've been doing is we're moving those ideas directly to our website to share. Someone made an idea about yarn bombing, and I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. Many of you want to know, that's when you actually knit entire, if they call it kind of yarn graffiti, you wrap entire trees, entire buildings around kind of crocheted yarn. So I went and found a website that told you how to do it and put it online. So our first one, because you heard me harping on this, is at home. We purposely call this at home. So this is a model where you can take any single task or activity that is done in the real world, which is like most of our day. And as long as you can give people safe and sterilized resources, they can be delivered at home. And so that opens up a world of opportunity. And if you're thinking right now, there's no way that I am creating toolkits and driving around the city and being able to deliver 50. Well, you don't have to. I'm gonna give you 2 ideas. One, I really, really push, and then one is practical, but it has some ethical issues. The first one is, why not support every single small business, Black-owned business, Latinx-owned business, Asian-owned business at this time? Is you could partner with a company who's struggling and say, you know what, I want to order all of my supplies through you, but I'm also willing to pay for it. But if you would be willing to package and ship those in a safe way, we are finding that people will go out of their way right now to be able to have opportunities to get income. It also means that all of our tax dollars, all of your tax dollars that are going to the city that actually fund One Summer Chicago and also funds enrichment programs are going back into the communities that most need those resources. Now, if you don't have that opportunity, or the program model that you're designing really there isn't a model for that, is the next option is you know that if you join Amazon Prime, it's free delivery. And you always probably used it for yourself. But you know, you can go in there and create a toolkit, identify all the items, put them in your wish list. And then you just add them to your account and you just change the shipping address every single time. So you could just sit there, and if you have an intern, it's even faster. You just type in and ship directly to every single one of your young people. Now, the one benefit of that is that, as you know, Amazon covers the cost of any lost or non-received packages. So if your young person doesn't get it, you actually get a refund. Those are just 2 ways that you can do one extreme or the other to ensure that your young people get things. Now, I'm gonna add in here that one creative idea that came from our Minnesota partners was we were really terrified that most of their program is gonna be a little bit online because they have 1,400 young people and like 4 staff people. And we were like, well, how do we shock them out of the fact that it's not school? So they have a lot of corporate partners because those are already the work sites. So they're actually going to build care packages for home offices. So they're getting little posters, they're getting Post-it notes, they're even getting snacks, they're getting a little coasters. They're just sending their people. So we just say, hey, if you can, you know, I use Party City, it's super inexpensive, just to send your young people some, and at the very least, one thing we recommend is sending everyone a notebook. It is a lot more fun. Everyone thinks you got to go in the chat. Then you lose what's in the chat. I just use a notebook, and you're going to see today we're going to post our notebooks online. Okay, the next one is online. Now, there are a great many activities that young people love that are naturally done online. You can do websites, you can design gaming, you can actually become a junior accountant. There are all sorts of activities that are native to being online, which means that if young people are already passionate about that, they don't mind being online all the time. So this idea is that there's all sorts of trainings, all sorts of jobs, from data science to Excel modeling, to graphic design, to doing YouTube videos. These are things that are naturally online. So if you want to do an online program, just think about, don't try to force something that was so natural offline into the online space. Like I said, there's unlimited amount of opportunities in there. Our last model is learn and earn. And if you are not paying a stipend, we just call it learn and do. are models that blend kind of learning, and I wrote online or even in packets. We show later, Black Lives Matter actually has a beautiful printed entire guide to an activist modeling program. So you could actually buy those or download those and send those to your young people, just like CPS is sending packets. But we definitely recommend there's a doing part. So this idea is that I'm going to learn a new skill, and we're going to show you that whole model this afternoon. I'm going to learn a new skill, but I'm going to apply it. So I would not put young people on learning all summer unless that's what they've opted into, right? If they wanted to learn all summer, they would have gone to summer school. It's saying introduce some kind of topic. Maybe they're learning some data science and they're analyzing health disparity data from COVID. I know for a fact that the CPS Department of Equity called me and said, we would love to have an intern to be kind of a junior data analyst this summer because they wanted to participate in one summer in Chicago. But again, they're going to learn a new skill and then they're going to apply it. So now we have remote, but now we've opened up the possibilities of, I have 3 new models to play from. And maybe you vary it. Maybe the at-home are for people, especially if you're worried about getting access to technology. If you are doing at home, the most technology you need is the ability to check in on, and you can do it by phone or on a computer, is to do the check-ins for the leadership development, for the hangouts, for those pieces, but that does not mean super high broadband. You are not doing multi-user global gaming. So maybe you have an at-home for people who you know aren't gonna have tech, but also like the kinesthetic people they don't wanna be sitting on. You have an online option, maybe some learning if you're doing multiple programs, but maybe one of these already you know fits perfectly into your model. The theme here, like I wrote above, is that as long as the skills and tasks that you're focusing on are matched to the environment that young people are in, it will work. That's how you kind of test yourself. All right, let's go to our next one. So here we're gonna give you a bunch of ideas in case you're thinking, I have no idea what she's talking about. And some of these actually just came from our call yesterday. So what I've been doing is that as people have shared ideas, we've been adding them to this. These are all real world ideas that people are doing. So many of these are great as programs, but as internships. Remember we said they're kind of the same? Because everything you do that uses a skill is a career pathway. So everything in my mind is an internship. So one that came up yesterday is a lot of people are just doing elderly check-ins, right? So they're checking in on their elders in their communities. But then was a wonderful woman from CHA said, well, what if we pushed it further? What if it was actually oral history rather than just checking in? So then I thought, well, that's actually perfect because there's an enormous amount of oral history curriculum and training online. And our resource developer, Cassandra, is already actually looking up resources on that because she said that she wanted to do an oral history of her own Latinx family. The next one, we talked about this balance between food scarcity and a fresh food campaign. And many of you have talked about culinary. What's nice about this one too is that you can just do it as a leadership activity. But this idea about young people being able to plant family or community gardens, all the community gardens in my neighborhood are safe for social distancing because they were already apart. So this idea is that how can young people take over their own communities and take over their lots to actually grow their own food now more than ever being critical. But that idea about what is that balance between it? So it doesn't have to be just planting a garden and learning kind of the botanical side of it. It's also about food justice. We've talked a lot about the culinary program. I know when I was growing up, it's kind of sexist, but they used to be like, every man needs to know how to create at least 6 dishes for a date. Now that's some old outdated kind of philosophy, but I do think it would be great if every single young person left this summer with knowing how to cook really 6 great meals that are nutritious, which also ties to the program above. Next, a lot of people were doing mural programs. This is a very important time. And I think now, you know, how incredible it would be to have just kind of like another wave of extraordinary political artwork going up around the city. I've already seen it coming up. Is that it used to be obviously a group activity in a space. But if you look at how murals are designed, often they're co-created and designed, but they're broken down into squares to actually complete and paint. So we thought, what if we sent every young person just a physical board of that square? They could be painting that at home and kind of conversing online and checking in. And then when the stay-at-home order lifts, imagine how extraordinary beautifully it would be for all of those young people to come back together, create a group installation to show that even if they were apart, they were together. And there's no limit on how many people could do that. You could have 100 young people doing that. Maybe we even have a whole gallery show at the Museum of Contemporary Art to bring that into wider spaces. A fine arts program where you're translating social justice themes into original artwork. MHA has actually always done that. Every time we come up with a new theme, we actually fund on commission a whole group of young artists to translate that work because we found that young people may not always have the voice to articulate their ideas and their insights, that allowing them to create original artwork and then write about their artwork has been a transformative. We know that when we started working with young people around the language around dreams, for them it felt virtually impossible because of the barriers, and it opened up everyone's eyes to say, we need to be less flippant when we use dream big language, that we have to provide the resources and the structures and remove the barriers to that. And it taught us so much about how we actually run MHA now. Lastly, there's a mosaic program where actually people are doing mosaics to fill potholes. So this could be a great way to take kind of even political messages and fill up your whole city. They could be designing this. So these are just some fun ideas that are all outside, but all really meaningful. If you have any program ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat. So next, these are also great for regular programs, but they also look a little bit more like traditional internships. So if you're planning on, hey, I know my young person's gonna have to get a job right after the summer, these are just some themes that we know are very viable. So one are marketing roles, where youth are producing kind of weekly newsletters for communities, nonprofits, and small businesses. So in one call we were talking about, and this was actually a couple of weeks ago, but even more powerful now, is that she wanted to have all of her young people do a pro Bronzeville newsletter to really highlight and promote the transformative changes in small business that were going on in Bronzeville. But how even more powerful is that going to be for young people to take a lead on that this week? Next is thinking about web development, that the ability to push out your own company and your small business to get opportunities. There are amazing lists going around about kind of, eat and buy at Black businesses. Well, maybe that young people could build a whole website for their own community and really promote that. But even a single small business or a single nonprofit finally having that website they've always wanted could be really powerful. Also, junior fundraisers. This was actually taken up by many of our partners, where young people are actually doing research on grants that can support the nonprofits they're even working with. Or maybe they have a nonprofit that's struggling in their neighborhood and they want to help them. Teaching and, sorry, I thought I edited this, tech support, is we found that a lot of people are maybe in your own company, are struggling with the panic around how am I going to manage this online? Even for me, I'm going back and forth from over here. And this is that, why not hire a young person to be your tech support or your teaching assistant? One Summer Chicago goes up to the age of 24. So if you're in an enrichment program, it's not too late. You could actually hire an intern and you don't even have to pay for that. You just fill out the timesheet. But why not make young people really part of your own staff this summer? And we're going to show you later how you can hire someone to be the social director. I know for me, probably what I think is cool to hang out is not the same thing as young people. Lastly, youth making YouTube videos for maybe a back to school campaign. What I wanted to highlight yesterday on Tuesday, or actually Wednesday, it was brought out to me and I had heard this and now I'm taking more commitment to it, that TikTok has not been supportive for Black and brown creators. So I switched this to YouTube, which is just as viable, but I also went online and found a lot of other alternatives to TikTok. So we'll be promoting those. But when I have young people take charge of a social issue and promote that, and I can show you on the next slide of how MHA will be doing that. Last, maybe your organization has always served a bilingual population or a Spanish-speaking population, but you've never had the time and the resources to translate that. Now would be an amazing opportunity for your bilingual students to take a lead and do Spanish translation, but also closed captioning to make sure that every one of your videos, and we're going to be investing in this, is able to be understood and interpreted by people with hearing impaired. And many of the platforms are all free. So again, these are just some of the ideas. There are hundreds of them, and we're going to show you later how you can use this website called ONET to spark those. Maybe just think around your own community. Maybe you're going to be a community economic development advisor, and young people are learning about small businesses. Which takes us to our next option, which is earn and learn. So our general theory is that when you're not good at something, it's solely because you don't know how to do it yet. And so why not think about this summer is really investing, because you can, is maybe you have all your work sites are like, I'm really absolutely willing to take, young people for like a week or two, but I really just don't think I can do a whole summer. And in the DFSS model is young people theoretically could go to a work site the last 2 weeks. So we said, well, instead of just chucking it all together, you could go to an employer and say, well, what if we got our young people trained in customer service? They got trained in data science, they got trained in Google Apps, and then the last 2 weeks they're interning for you, or you do a custom project. We've highlighted a couple of things here, but there are so many opportunities with free online learning now. Almost every paid site has opened up to free. I can also guarantee if you found something you love, if you called a single company right now and said, I want to use this, but I don't have any money, they'd probably open it up for you. I want to highlight one that just came out because this used to be fee-based and they just unlocked it to be free. So I wanted you to know immediately. Grow with Google is basically, you can get a certification in the entire Google suite of business applications. They're also, I don't know if they've been overwhelmed or not, but they were offering free one-to-one coaching. That means you don't have to be the coach. You don't have to be a master at this, but your young people could learn that. And it allows them to have a certification at the end of the summer for getting jobs. I want to highlight out that it used to be very dismissive of admin assistants. Now, largely that's because it used to be the only job women could have, and so we wanted to break out of that stereotype. But if you look at the state and the city, the average wage for an admin assistant is $25 an hour. So this idea about how do we even revive that into being more of like an executive Google kind of manager. Next is Nerdy Media has an entire online podcasting program on LRNG, which is a website that's free to all young people, has tons of resources on there. So we're actually brought Nerdy Media in partnership with Lawrence Hall Youth Services, and they're gonna actually create a youth social justice media program where young people are gonna be producing and developing content throughout the entire summer to showcase the extraordinary work that young people are doing. So we basically didn't want to be a hypocrite, and we're like, we need our own Safe Summer program too. Like I said, there are Black Lives Matter curriculum. We've actually been curating a lot more resources for how young people can really become kind of social justice leaders this summer as their official program and project. Coursera and Udemy, these are actually sites that were really built, largely kind of marketed to adults. But these are really kind of strong career background kind of sites. So from data science to artificial intelligence, that you can explore that and think about, let's try out a new kind of topic. But again, you want to do a project with that. So let's say if it's data science, maybe you're analyzing the response rates for how police responded to this week's protests. Khan Academy, if you're really focused on, we were asked to do some summer learning loss work, but kids don't want to be in school. Maybe they learn kind of math and then they're practicing creating an algorithm, which is basically the source of computer science. Youth councils, so there's lots of resources online. So maybe your organization, or maybe there's a company who's always wanted kind of youth voice. You could run a whole youth council. There's data science and health disparities research. We talked about that. Census outreach. We have a whole guide on the website, the Safe Summer website. Social marketing, but there's an unlimited things. The theme here is just whatever they learn, you just want to create a corresponding project to bring that learning to life, to apply it. That cycle of learning and doing is such a powerful way to keep young people engaged. Okay, I'm gonna have a little sip of water. Okay, so we started with the remote, and hopefully we kind of unlocked the fact that it's not gonna all be like miserable just sitting online all day. Now you're thinking, I got my home one, I got my online one, I'm super excited about this new learn and earn thing, never thought about that. But then you're like, I gotta fill 120 hours, like what do I do? How do I unpack this idea? I don't really know, I've never been a program designer before. Many of you are being asked to do program design for the first time in your life. So we took it to a next level. A couple of weeks ago, we added this. So now we're gonna show you, there's 3 ways to bring your idea to life across 6 weeks. And then after that, we're gonna show you how to program an even week, so that we've taken, like I said, I promise we go from really big picture down to like, what are you gonna do Tuesday morning? The first one we're calling kind of mastery. So this is where young people are focused on one skill or one task. So maybe this is a good example of, I'm gonna learn how to do one oral history interview. I'm gonna really master that the first 2 weeks of my program. And then I'm gonna do one oral history every single week. So this model is very much like what we do if you have a job that's more of a routine. You master one specific content area, you get really good at it, and you get better and better and better at it, but you're not changing up your whole flow every week. You're not doing something different. So maybe you're learning how to do one newsletter and you're doing one newsletter every single week. So this is a chance for young people to really practice and practice and practice and really master something. And what's beautiful about this is that you know how the pace in school just pushes you forward. So if you make a D, you don't get to go back and like learn it all over again. So this is a chance for young people who may not have ever really mastered anything, never had that sense of just like, I'm amazing, I'm awesome, I really know something, is give them a chance to really master something. And this afternoon, we're gonna show you how to unpack these to make them viable. So this is not, we go even deeper than this. The next one is more project-based learning. So this is where you're focusing on one project for the whole 6 weeks. The easiest thing, because we've all seen it before, is like a website, right? So a website easily takes 6 weeks because each week you're actually learning a new skill. Let's take 6 weeks to make one page. Take 6 weeks to think about what is the right layout, what is the right structure, how many pages do I want, at the information architecture. So for this, people are gonna learn lots of different skills and then apply them as they go to achieve a great project by the end. So maybe in the mastery, they're doing a different kind of smaller project every single week. This is one that crosses that whole time. If you have just been asked to create a huge program and they say like, you have really just no idea, everything you're working on really doesn't convert, I'm going to show you a really fun one. It's actually really powerful. It sounds like you're cheating, but it's not. The last one is a rotation program. So if you go to some of the biggest companies in the world, like Accenture, this is how you actually get your job. You were hired as a general associate. You were then rotated through different departments of the company to see which one really matches your goals, which one matches your passions. Now, our young people don't get that deep an opportunity. Maybe they got like one job shadow, but they're only really learning one job. So this is a model where you could create a little different career or content deep dive. So maybe it's in arts, and they're younger people, and one week is sculpture, 1 week is digital media, and 1 week is painting. So that model, you're basically getting exposed to lots of different opportunities and career paths, and you're getting to try on a little bit of an activity. So taking back to our culinary, maybe you're going to do community economic development. We're going to do restaurant touring, and then we're going to do finance. That in that week, maybe they write a menu for a restaurant they would want to start. Maybe they write a budget for financial planning. So this allows you to think about, in your own organization, let's say if you're serving a lot of young people, and you had 4 or 5 staff, but you're all feeling a little overwhelmed right now, maybe you just say, we're each going to take 1 week, and we are going to rotate around with our young people. So week 1 is with Sandy, week 2 is with Leslie. So you're really just mastering 1 week, and you just do that 4 weeks in a row. So those are just 3 different ways, right? So we went from remote to our kind of general models, and now you have 3 6-week strategies. So hopefully right now you're having the epiphany. They're like, oh, mine's a project. So I'm so excited because she's actually already designed what the project model should look like. Or you're like, we've been struggling, but this rotation one is cool because, to be honest, we had 4 ideas and we've been fighting and fighting and we just can't settle on one. You don't have to settle. You can do every single one of them. And if you're working with younger people, what's cool about the rotation program, and to be honest, we had invented this last fall as a new program model, is if you're working with, say, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, you could start with a rotation program, because then when they come back at 17 and 18 to one summer, or to come back to your enrichment program, they could go deeper because it allows you to maximize their time. Nothing worse than enrolling in a program and realizing 2 weeks in you're not into it, and you're like, oh, what a waste of time. You don't want to be here. I don't want you to be here. You're just, you're tuning out, you're acting up. That's largely because my passions weren't matching. So now we have this model. One thing I just want to highlight is, just because the middle one says project, that does not mean that there isn't a deliverable for every strategy. Now, best practice for any program is that there's some culminating product, demonstration, or even performance. A lot of people are doing online exercise, and I was like, an online video. I was like, make one online video of your best online exercise and make an entire YouTube channel around how young people can actually take exercise classes from other young people. But think about some deliverable, and this is not just to prove that your program did something, but I will say it's going to be really helpful when they're like, what'd your kids do all summer? We don't really know, they were offline. Well, here are all of our projects. But it's also a sense, we talked earlier about that sense of mastery, that sense of identity, that consciousness, is that when you have an actual deliverable, people cannot question how amazing you are. One of the biggest reasons that we started MHA was because we were so sick and tired of white people and privileged people not recognizing the talents of the young people that we served. And we realized it was because this doubt in their mind, because they refused to believe it when someone told them they were amazing. I'm a great problem solver. If every one of your young people leaves this summer with some evidence of their amazingness, they will be able to fight for themselves and fight for their dignity in that job interview and that career interview. So you'd be fortifying them with the evidence of them being amazing. Just checking over here, make sure we're good. Okay, so now you've decided you're going to do a project, and you're thinking about still, like, programming 20 hours a week just still feels overwhelming. Well, your whole week was not supposed to only be about work, because even in a typical work week that you have, you're not doing your task all 20 hours, right? You're jumping onto calls. So we thought, let's replicate a normal life experience. So obviously you're going to have the work and enrichment activity, but doing doesn't turn into performing until you have check-ins and feedback and recognition. So you always want to make time in your things. You don't want to be doing only activities and then never getting feedback. So maybe you're saying, hey, it's okay if we only do 10 hours of activity because we want to do 2 whole hours of check-ins, how it's going. We really want to recognize young people. Now, we often always use our feedback to say for growing and critiquing. MHA has absolutely obsessively, compulsively talking about recognition. People keep saying if young people had more self-esteem or people had more confidence, the way to solve that is every time a young person does something amazing, identify what they did and tell them how great they are. This does not make privileged millennial people. If you have evidence to justify why someone is amazing, you are allowed to recognize somebody 100 times a day. I often stop people on the street all the time. I don't even know them because I saw something that they did and I want to recognize them. And often first they kind of freak out and then they're like, wow, no one's told me anything positive about me for years. I mean, it's devastating. Nobody should be walking around with low self-esteem. And your voice can solve that. Next is, it's really critical for young people to still be getting these kind of leadership, college, and career development. Even if you are working with a 6-year-old, the ability to start thinking about themselves as leaders, building that sense of agency. Now you can program in this space. There are hundreds and hundreds of models. CPS has an entire model for college and career coaching. The state does. There are hundreds of curriculum. We have our own curriculum I'm going to show you. But this is where we had already bucketed in because we know that youth workers always want time to go deeper into subject. They always want to be coaching. They always want, so maybe you're working, the jobs young people are working at or the program is not super fancy. Maybe they're just like scanning documents. There's always been a role to take that work higher. So we want to program in this opportunity. And if you're worried about this, just this morning, everyone I told you we're hiring up, just this morning, I reached out to one of the single most incredible career developers to say, would you be willing to be one of our coaches this summer to provide every one of our partners with access to a super creative career development person? So he will hopefully be able to be starting at the end of the month. But again, this idea about how do I take what I'm learning and make meaning out of my life? You can make meaning by applying it to a leadership pathway, a college pathway, or it's general post-secondary or career. But we just want to highlight leadership because we always kind of talk about college and career development, but that's often the distant future. Young people are and can be leaders right now, and you can help them achieve that goal by the end of the summer. Then, why not shake it up? Invite lots of guest speakers. So whatever subject matter you're working on, inviting people. So here's the thing right now. Privileged people are trying to find a way to make meaning. So instead of just calling all their friends and checking in on them, why don't you just say, hey, thanks for checking in on me. What I really want you to do is be a guest speaker this summer so that our young people can learn from you. And what's nice, I shouldn't say what's nice. There's nothing nice about COVID. But it used to be that I'd have to take time off of work, drive to where I'm going, wait to be a guest speaker, and then drive back, which made a limitation on people saying yes. I swear to God, you can call anybody in the entire world right now. We're just talking to the Adler. I'm like, I'm sure there's scientists all over the world that would love to pop in and be a guest speaker to your program. That was never possible before. So just think, unleashing this opportunity. If you want to get some famous person, maybe create an Instagram campaign. This also allows young people to interact with different personalities. Let's be honest, if you had to even put up with me all summer, you'd probably be totally annoyed with me by the end. So why not shake it up with some guest speakers? Then, so this is the thing about work, is that we only hear the kind of worky part, right? But often at work or in our program, all those kind of hangouts, all those pop-up funds that you've always let happen, those are still really critical. Someone literally just posted a PhD article on the importance of like youth leisure. You're like, great. It's only if you get pushback, but of course it's necessary. Remember what I said earlier, like, oh God, like this would actually scare me. Now I went online and I was like, Koopa Link's having this online dance party, but like I would not have thought of that. Is why not hire a group of your young people to be social directors? So during the week, they are inventing and researching and coming up with great new activities. And maybe on Fridays, you have this kind of fun hangout Friday so everyone's leaving on a positive space. Maybe they're actually creating protest. I mean, like there's so many opportunities. The idea is that don't forget that sometimes young people just need time to hang out. Many of you, this is an adult call, sometimes in the evening, I just open up my Zoom with a friend and we're just sitting there kind of doing our thing, having a glass of wine together. It doesn't have an agenda, it doesn't have a program, there's no video. And lastly, checking in on your young people. It is very hard to self-advocate for yourself on a Zoom with 40 people. You are not going to do that right now on this Zoom. Definitely on the chat, young people are not going to do this. So there needs to be some way, and I know some of you legally can't do just one-on-one, but we recommended then in the orientation, if you mix up the adults that they get to hang out with, in your two-on-one, they will already feel comfortable being open to that. But I really think that across all of these, whether it's an employer or your young people or your own staff, is we need to make the culture where talking about what you need is much more open than it ever has before. Maybe you don't do that just the first week, but maybe the first week, and we're going to show you in part 2, how can you really focus on building enough trust so that young people start to have these kind of open conversations with you, and maybe building that culture. And often, when young people were at a work site, if you're on here in an internship, that wasn't as possible because kids weren't conditioned to be online. But now maybe you have an employer, it's a great opportunity, but you're just really worried they're not known for being the most social, emotionally aware person. You could be that coach for them. So don't worry about that, but I think every young person needs this opportunity. So there when we started, we're like, remote, this whole big world, what am I gonna do? Then we're like, there's 3 options. Then she gave me 3 program models, and now she told me how to program a single week. So when you look at all of this, filling 20 hours is actually gonna be a lot easier than you thought, and maybe you're actually gonna need more time. But we realized that people were only thinking about this first box of enrichment and work activities. And that I will say across, this has been viewed by every single city agency, every contractor, every funder that's supporting you. Everyone is 100% okay with these being part of your program hours. So don't feel like that's not okay now. It's always been okay, and definitely more okay now. Then if you're still panicking, again, like I said, hiring assistants. So if you were already on the call from One Summer Chicago, or if you were in Chicago, then you're all kind of good because you've probably already hired all your young people. But I've really been encouraging that every single nonprofit organization running a youth enrichment program this summer should hire someone from One Summer Chicago. So the wages for One Summer Chicago actually go up, depending on who you partner with, to $14 an hour. This means that not only are you providing an opportunity for our young people, you are giving the viability for them to earn an extraordinary wage this summer to help with economic disparities in general, and certainly to support their families. So I recommend everybody hire an intern. If you were on this call from another one of our MHA cities, every single city has some form of summer job program. So I highly recommend that you become kind of an engine of your own economic development this summer and be part of the story. So I just want to highlight one more thing again, because this comes up a lot. And I probably said it 1,000 times, but they say you have to hear something 6 times before it sinks in. So we had our work enrichment activity, and we had our performance check-ins and feedback. I just want you to think about this process. I'm learning something, I'm doing something, back and forth. Learning, doing, learning, doing. That is the best way to become masters at something, but it's also the best way to keep youth engaged online. If your whole first week is all just online passive learning, they will not come back in week 2. So that's why we recommend the first week is all engagement, all team building, all creativity to get that kind of energy flowing and build those relationships. But this is a cycle. It's actually just a great idea anyway. But this is definitely the key to surviving being online. To help you with this, we just wanted to show, many of you may or may not know about MHA. So we are an open source community. Our philosophy is, we're basically, our big movement is just really me, because we partner with all these organizations. Every time we do a project, 100% of everything built during that project has to be made freely available to everyone else. So every single one of the tools you see here was actually built in the real world with real youth workers and real teams. This is not some research-based. Everything is grounded in research. We test for that, but it was developed by real people with real young people. So we have a whole youth empowerment curriculum. So this was actually built because a lot of summer jobs, to be honest, are kind of sucky. And we're like, but they don't have to be unmeaningful, even if the task is boring. So this is a whole entire curriculum that takes you through, what are my strengths? What is my mission in life? How do I unpack that into a goal? How do I overcome adversity in that goal? And how do I bring it to other people? It is a sequence of just 20-minute activities strung together. Most of them can actually be done if you just use breakouts and can be easily translated. But it's not like this big scope and sequence, is that you can grab any activity out there and just do that online for your extra kind of leadership development or hot-ons. If you come this afternoon, we're going to show you how to do an awesome circle. We have tons of feedback resources. If you're saying, I don't normally give feedback, how do I do that? We have a really easy tool. These last ones are really fun. So for all those check-ins, one of our New York City public school teachers said, young people actually like talking about their skills, but they don't know how to start a conversation. It feels really weird. Like, my skill is, so she went through all the skill sets and wrote sentence starters. Like this week, I was really focused. That's actually a prompt for grit. And so each week when you check in, you could give this to young people and say, each week, I just want you to figure out one prompt that resonates with you this week, and we're going to start a conversation. It's very hard to just ask people to chime in on Zoom. It's painful. But if everyone is given a prompt to respond to, and then you just call on people, that's how you kind of solve for that dead just struck the dead air. These other two tools were actually designed for how you check in on young people. Again, we found that for staff, but definitely for employers who just didn't know how to have a conversation, this is also built by this great learning designer, is that there's a question from column 1 that you ask, and then depending on the answer, you have a question from column 2. We found that if you can have just a 2-question exchange, that the whole entire rest of the conversation will flow naturally. So again, MHA is all about super practical ways just to have great conversations and get young people to realize their potential. So then we recommend, so MHA, we're going to show you in the second half, we built a whole week-by-week template. Literally, activity design, what's my feedback prompt, what's my meaning-making activity, so that you could just fill in the blanks. We definitely recommend at the bare minimum that you plan out all of your weekly activities on a calendar. Maybe Monday, you're doing guest speaker, motivational guest speaker in the morning, you're doing some activity and a feedback check-in. So what came up on our call yesterday that was really funny is many of you are probably old enough to remember, maybe they still do it, where you used to get this sheet of paper about what food was in the cafeteria, was going to be served for the month. And you would kind of plan your day accordingly to what food, oh God, I hate meatloaf, I'm bringing my own that day. It was always kind of a fun thing to have. Young people do not need to live in an unknown of what's going to be happening this summer. But also, if they know what's coming, they're going to be a lot more likely to stay engaged. So we recommend literally just creating a whole calendar ahead of time and giving that to young people so they can plan accordingly and they know how to plan their summer. And if they know they're going to be gone a certain day, you could say, hey, I got a doctor's appointment that day, or I had a vacation planned. I'm going to miss this couple activities. How do I adjust for that? This could be the most extraordinary gift you give to your young people. And if you are designing a program that's going to be implemented by other staff people you hire this summer, you must give this to them as a gift, especially even a whole program design. But you must not let them sink or swim on their first day. And we can help you with that section 2 to unpack all that. Everybody's set up for success. So we did add a little bit of extra. So we have that weekly plan. And that's really about how do you program a whole week for a wonderful experience for a young person. Now, if you are doing a work site where they're willing to just do some of the work parts, but not all the whole thing, here's a little recommendation about what to ask for an employer to make sure that they are playing their part this summer. So we recommend at minimum, they check in at the beginning of the week and review their task for the week. Now we are actually also offering employer training. Someone asked, I'm like, well, why not? So if you want me to train your employers, I'm sure I could squeeze in some time. But just ask them this, what are you guys gonna be working on this week? They check in on Monday morning and you're reviewing the task plan, you're receiving any training. At minimum, they check in again in the middle of the week, don't wait all week. And the end of the week, they're getting a review and getting feedback and recognitions. Now, I just hired an intern, and I realized, we scheduled just a permanent check-in every morning from 9 to 9:30. If something comes up for me, I just email her and let her know, maybe reschedule, but at least she knows that there's an opportunity every day for us to connect. It's only 30 minutes, and we don't even use it all. We also feel like program staff, you should know, because of this, might need to take on more responsibility. So in the past, we've done tons of trainings. It's usually timesheets. Literally, if you're a program manager, you're just literally obsessively getting kids' timesheets. We think this summer you're going to have to take on a little more of that responsibility. So now's the time in this last month to really figure out how you're going to negotiate that. If you're hiring an extra intern, but it's super important that you feel like you are set up for success because young people do need those extra social emotional connectivity. And there's actually lots of ways to think about filling that. And lastly, here is that always having individual group activities to get that sense of belonging. So again, that last piece, we have found that young people will stay more engaged, even on their work site, if they're feeling part of a community. Now, what's fascinating is we have a partner in New Orleans that actually started doing remote internships this spring. And we measure young people's feeling of a sense of belonging in their program. So we thought that would go way down because it was online. It actually skyrocketed because everyone now is so obsessively, compulsively committed to checking in with young people that they felt more connected and more supported than ever before because they were having so many online check-ins. So if you shake it up and make them kind of fun and engaging and authentic and supportive, actually we're now seeing an increase in some of the real positive youth development activities. I'm gonna quickly check our chat to see what Kelly got. Of interviews with employers and our interns, should we create interview questions to give them? Absolutely. So actually, while we're on this page, I'm so glad I looked over at this. So you're gonna see at the end, we show you how to make an intake based on your program design. that is the exact same tool you would do as an employer. So if I'm doing a social media program, then I'm going to interview you on the resources you have and the skills that you have. So I think everybody this summer, whether you are an employer or whether you are a program person, you need to do one layer of interviewing to make sure that your program, your young people's needs and passions and resources match your program. It's not as easy anymore to just kind of put someone in a classroom or an opportunity, because there's lots of other things that kept them going. So I'm going to recommend, and to be honest, we actually show you how to do it. Lastly is making sure that everyone is equipped with the resources they need to make positive mental health referrals and support to their young people. Now, we've never encouraged people to take this on themselves unless they are trained clinical counseling. I'm very lucky that I actually went to social work school, but it's been a while and I wouldn't even take that on. Luckily, we live in a city and a state that really jumped into action. The city even has a whole website for doing guided meditations for mental health. That's kind of a new feature. But I know for a fact that there are new hotlines and new resources. Many of you work in organizations that actually provide these supports. I would make sure that you've talked to them and say, with everything going on, do you have the bandwidth? MHA is also considering, we need to make sure it's legal, is to have one of the people we talked about. We get to hire 5 people this summer to be a support squad for you. It's really having someone who's a phenomenal mental health referral expert, so that you can call and say, you know, I don't know if this is an issue, but I've been noticing some signs of depression possibly with my young person. We just don't want to let anything go unchecked. So just walking in and being prepared. And if you are working with employers offsite this summer, kind of work sites, more traditional, I highly recommend that you have a much more open conversation about this. Now, our young people were always struggling, but we always felt really conflicted with bringing it up to an employer because we didn't want to set them at a disadvantage. We didn't want them to divide into stereotypes about the needs. But there's not a single person, if you are really super rich and white, you're really, working in a low-income community and a family, everybody is struggling now. So it's actually made this conversation more accessible now than ever. I just want you to make a culture where it's okay to talk about this. It should be okay all the time, but we know in normal conditions, there's a lot of stigma against mental health issues. And obviously having the right referrals, that if your young people are starting to show signs that they may have kind of symptoms of COVID, is being ready to attack that. And we are also building a whole website on our resource page. We are trying to pull the mental health resources together. But of course, we will never be as inclusive as what everything has. Okay, so that ends the section of belief. So I've gone through tons of ideas and tons of models, and hopefully you just saw yourself in there and you're like super excited, or maybe you're just like, I'm still really nervous, but I'm ready to jump into this because Leslie's gonna help me. That's the belief side. So now we just wanted to say, there's gonna be a checklist for barriers. Now, I call these kind of a capacity checklist. So these are not insurmountable. Now, discrimination is an insurmountable barrier in the next 6 weeks. Running your program this summer has the capacity to be successful if you just put in a little bit of checklisting time. This is not as comprehensive. I'm just showing you some samples that on our website, we already sent you a link to. All the training resources. This is a whole separate list. You can download it. You can do as a team. I just want to go through the buckets. So one are kind of legal safety issues. If you are in a program where you are going to do social distancing, obviously you have an obligation to ensure that they have masks. But also you have an obligation to mark out on the floor and make it really clear. Now, one of the most beautiful statements that Lisa Davis said from DFSS was, how are we going to keep young people from wanting to hug and connect with each other? Because they haven't seen each other, and we know how big that is. Many of us are struggling with that. So the more structure you can place on the social distancing, less likely you're gonna have to constantly be yelling at people or to have to go on that offensive. But also, can they legally use the platform? I mean, most of us are working with young people who are 13 or older, but if you're working with younger kids, there are rules and issues around using those platforms. So you just wanna check on that. Then space capacity. So obviously if you're social distancing together, you obviously are thinking about this, but you also need to think about, young people are at home and maybe their parent or guardian doesn't want you painting a mural in the living room. So I think as part of your intake, we talked about doing an interview. Part of your intake should be, well, this program can be a little messy, right? You're gonna be building planters and gardens. So is your family okay with this? Or to be honest, if you're doing an indoor urban gardening, you need to make sure they're actually getting the light they need. I mean, I know it sounds crazy to be that specific, but that could be make or break for a program. And obviously the tech. Now, I know that the city and many partners have been able to free up and are buying Chromebooks and trying to solve for this, but I just wanted to highlight, you only need the device and the internet bandwidth that matches your program. If you are doing an activity that is all at home and not online, you only need enough access and connectivity for maybe the 2 hours a week that you are doing supports and check-in and coaching, maybe your Friday check-in. A lot of young people already have kind of, they've figured out how to navigate around getting on Instagram Live and doing all of that. But again, you don't need the same internet access as if you are doing high-speed gaming. Google actually has an offline feature. QuickBooks, most online platforms have an offline feature where you can actually work offline if your bandwidth is inconsistent. But just again, you just want to match those together. The next one is thinking about what your youth capacity is. We've talked about this a lot. But one more time, what skills can you leverage from your young people? But also, once you've built your program, if there's a prerequisite skill, again, you want to make that part of your interview. If you have an employer that says they absolutely need to have this skill, and that young person might be extraordinary and amazing and one of the most loved young people you've ever met, that employer is still going to be really annoyed if they don't show up with that skill. This is that time to be super transparent. Next, what differentiations need to be made for diverse learners? The mobility issues. One of the things that's been the struggle is that as a lot of programs have started to kind of potentially reopen, a lot of students with disabilities have not been included in that. So you just want to think about making that extra level. Now, what's really interesting, we found that for some students who have social anxiety disorders, have actually found being able to work at home, online, and quietly is actually much easier. I'm an introvert, so I naturally hire introverts, and actually, to be honest, they're all kind of happy with only checking in a half hour a day. So you just might want to think about not just the kind of physical disabilities or issues that young people have, but all the diverse learning opportunities. Again, talking about what level of crisis, I think being able to check in with young people. I know a couple of years ago, we hired 6 young people. And there was a woman who was in our program that did have a very high level of mental health issues. We kept her actually in the program so that she could receive the funding she needed to get help, but we actually just got her full-time mental health support. So we were kind of ready to navigate that and make those adjustments. Then staff capacity. A, do you have enough qualified staff? If you decided you're going to jump into coding, you got to have someone who at least basically knows or is willing to learn how to do coding in the next 3 weeks. And is your staff ready to go digital? Maybe again, hire one of those young people now to say, hey, I'm going to be your tech support. I'm going to teach you how to use this. We are also pulling, many of you are going to have to be using Google Classrooms for the first time. Google actually, I even called CPS. I'm like, what are you using? And they're like, oh, Google's actually materials are the best. So we'll be posting those on the website. And then lastly, you want to think about, does this person have a history of strong youth relationships? If this is not, I'm going to be honest, if this is not a facilitator who in the past, young people always had trouble with, they're absolutely going to have trouble with it in an online environment. So maybe think about, my recommendation right now has been if you're in a work program, hire someone from an enrichment program. People on this call probably could share staff and resources to bring those resources together. Lastly, do you have enough money? Now, I know what's one of the amazing things that many of the government contractors who have been doing, or even foundation funding, is asking them for the adjusted money that you need to make this happen. Even with our own funder this week, we said, I know you were funding PD, but we actually really think that one of the most important PDs right now is to help our instructors lead racial transformation and healing circles. And we just said, we want to spend our money on this. It wasn't really optional. And they were like, great, we think that's important too. So don't be afraid to ask your funders for the resources you need to respond in this time. Many of them are being more flexible than they ever have before. So this is basically that balance of I have my great idea and I'm going to my checklist. I have my great idea and I'm going to my checklist. So this is just a dance that goes back and forth. But if you've kind of heard about this new wave of human-centered design or design theory, all great designers are going through that balance. Maybe this is not an experience you had, or maybe the barriers just feel so overwhelming to you. I want you to call me. Literally had a call a couple of weeks ago where she was so stressed out, and I was like, you're going to write every barrier on a sheet of paper, and I literally want you to go and burn it because your soul is telling you exactly what you want to be doing. And then she emailed me back and she's like, we've done it. And then she gets stressed out again, and I just talk her through it. So I want you to really count on me to help you through this. So remember we talked about these interview questions. So this is really great. I'm going to show you through how to make a simple intake. This is just a generic one that I made, but obviously for your own program, you'd want to be specific. But I want to highlight the reason why these questions. So years ago, I also rewrote, they are not necessarily utilized, but I rewrote the intake scripts for the re-enrollment centers for public schools. The first question they used to ask was, how many credits do you have? And I was like, one, kids would never know that. And one, They literally walked out of being a high school dropout, walked into your space and wanted to re-enroll in school, and that's your first question. I was like, it should be like, oh my God, amazing. I can't believe you came here today. Tell me more about your story. Well, young people right now could have that same experience. So instead of just first question being like, what tech device do you have? Do you have any special interests, goals, or passions that would help you stay motivated this summer? What are some of your key strengths that could help you? And if they've never reflected on their key strengths, now MHA has a ton of tools around this. But just say, what are you great at school? What have you learned in your after-school program? What do people always compliment you on? We have a whole list of prompts that we're going to be using in the second section that asks young people to say, from this list, are any of these your skills? Then maybe think about accommodation. So like, what would actually help you kind of overcome any kind of barriers you have that we could provide for you? And then you can ask them what tech devices. Now, if you were in One Summer Chicago, the One Summer Chicago application actually they added a device question. If you're in another city, it's not too late on your application to potentially add that. But again, you might want to adjust it and say, hey, for this, all you really need is a smartphone with some video capability, and we're actually going to pay for minutes. So I would say there's a young woman that was in crisis in the beginning of COVID. She was a young mom and she didn't have a phone. So, I had an extra phone, I sent it to her, but I was careful enough to also send her the money she needed to get a plan that would actually be unlimited for her. So maybe you're giving young people access to an unlimited opportunity to use their phone. But those are just some questions you might want to ask. This came up at the bottom, which is actually kind of a fun idea. Now, this is really powerful in Chicago public housing because CHA actually knows all of the residents and if they have siblings at home. This is either your worst idea or your greatest idea, depending on your sibling relationships. Being at home all summer, kind of doing your work together, I know people are going to really miss that interactive, but if you have a great relationship with a sibling, older or younger, maybe you're twins, there's always twins in One Summer Chicago when I do the data. Maybe thinking about enrolling them in the same program. So imagine, one's a shoe chef, one's kind of a soup chef, and they're the ones doing the culinary program at home together. But again, this is kind of creative ideas. Maybe before you used to always break up best friends because you wanted them to meet new people. Maybe online this summer, to have all that online communication and connectivity, you kind of allow best friends to be partners on a project. But again, you're kind of just trying to leverage this connectivity, this skill set, this whole ecosystem to be your backend and backdrop for running your program. Okay, so now I try to make you, I really just try to use this program to de-stress you, but there's a good chance that maybe some of you are like, holy shit. I had like an outline for the summer and now I'm like, I really just don't have the time or capacity. We want to show you a little intake that you can use to find a designer. Now, often these people are already working in your company, but to be honest, they could be your admin assistant that you just never realized, and she's probably sitting there wishing she was part of this story. It could be your custodial person who's got a cousin who's amazing, or maybe he has great ideas to run a whole landscaping program this summer. These are the kind of skills you need to be a Let's Save Summer designer. There's the adaptable and creative side where you're like, I want to do a mosaic, I want to do a painting, I want to do a website, that whole piece. Then there's just the logical side, which is if you've ever built a task plan, a project plan, then you just take this great idea and you unpack it in a project plan. Now, almost every nonprofit and job program is always forced to submit really detailed kind of descriptions of things to their funder. So you probably already have this skill. But this is just that, are you kind of willing to kind of play around, adapt to the conditions? But this is actually a little checklist that you can actually use in your own organization. Or if you're really, really worried about it, maybe ask to say, look, I really need some help. Do we have some extra funding that I could help someone just in the next few weeks to help design this? But again, if you work at a program that has a tons of volunteers that are maybe doing job shadows, or maybe they're doing resume writing, or those folks, ask your organization, can I tap into our entire volunteer pool? Because many of them have great projects and tasks in their own companies that they could donate to you. Many business schools actually thrive off of getting donated projects. So we're going to bring it all together, and then we'll have a last bit of questions. I don't see a ton on here, but I always like to stay on and answer questions for people. But many times people are waiting to the second session. So I'm going to bring it all together for you in one little quick story. Here's where we're going to go. So we ended with the design team because now you know what you're looking for. The next step I want you to do is pick your design team. Then you pick your program model. So you're like, am I at home? Am I going to do an online, a learn and earn? Then you're going to pick an activity plan and theme. I'm going to do online newsletters, and I'm going to take this mastery routine model. I'm going to unpack that. I'm going to create my weekly template. So we have a great weeks. Each one's kind of got the leadership and all the activities in it. I'm gonna go back to my planning checklist. I'm gonna go back and back to make sure I got it all sound. I know what I need. And then I'm gonna create my youth intake. And then I'm gonna launch my program because I got the right young people. I built an amazing program. I got my design team. I'm all good to go. And so that's really just the steps you need to take. And luckily, if you're here today, you have almost a month to work on this. Now, I will show you in the second half. I tested myself to see how fast I could build a program for the Lincoln Park Zoo. And to build the basic structure of the program did not take me that long because I was so focused and I wasn't panicked about all the other factors. So I just want you to say it is very feasible and doable still. But to help you with this, many of you hopefully logged in through this site, but you may have actually gotten an original setup link. So as you know, we launched this great website called Save Summer 2020. We've been adding to it. Cassandra has actually come on board to help facilitate and kind of lead that kind of whole online community. We've literally been adding resources every single day. But many people on the webinar always ask me, well, how am I going to get the training materials? Well, they're already online. We have all the videos online for every session, so you can just deep dive in there. If you're thinking, oh man, I don't want to wait till next Friday, I need my staff to take this, it is online right now. And all the tools, all the templates, really well, nice and organized, not some annoying Google Drive. But also I want to make sure, and while you're actually on this call right now, before you leave, I want you to type this in, and I would love for you to go on there right now to make sure you don't miss out on this. So we'd already hired Terrence and Stephen for this because we know that once you have your program design, that people are really trying to figure out, how do I actually do this in a virtual space? How do I bring all that love and that engagement and that enjoyment? So they have actually created a full series of trainings. Now, these are not really webinars. They've actually become masters of doing breakouts and having you actually have interactive online training, even at huge scale of 100 people. So these are going to be you testing on practices, testing on ideas. I just want you to say, these were not canned trainings that we just converted over. Every one of these was custom designed to be how to do this in a remote setting, to how to do onboarding and orientations, how to do reflection and celebration. So we want you to be able to do it, and you can sign up for all 6. There is no barrier and limitation. When this got released, the entire library signed up all of their staff to take all 6. So again, I want you to take full advantage of this because we know many of you are not going to have time to train your staff. And all of these will also be recorded and available all summer long. And then Terrence and Stephen will also, we're bringing them on, now that we have resources, to be your support coaches all summer. And of course, we have our weekly program design trainings. These will be going on for all the way through the 19th. And then after that, I'll focus mainly almost all my time on coaching for those last minute needs. But we definitely recommend you have a program design, probably at least 3 weeks before your program starts. But we know, last but not least. Okay, so take a deep breath now. You've just learned so much. I just want you to take a stop, take a deep breath. So you are either full of ideas, you are full of renewed passion, you are feeling kind of affirmed that in this incredibly hard week, you feel like I'm back to who I was because I was always working for this work. I was always working for activism and opportunity. Then I want you to know that if you are not feeling that way and you are stressed out, I also want you to open your email, and you're gonna get another one. I want you to sign up a session of coaching with me, even if it is just to have a social emotional check-in. I'm trained as a counselor as much as I'm trained as a program designer. I just want you to know I'm here for you in whatever way you need me to be here for you. And if you'd like, I'm gonna look through the chat. I know we have about a minute or 2 left, but there's not a lot of questions. It would be really helpful. I actually have a little follow-up form that literally, I think I've trained 600 people so far maybe, or no, 300 people so far, coaching people, and no one's filled it out. I get it. But if you want to share any kind of idea or epiphany or anything you have, what I'd love for you to do, because it is so important as we hire these folks this summer, if you want to write about any ideas or any strategies you'd like us to focus on, please order me around. I literally mean it, just saying, I wish you would spend your summer doing this for me because this is what I need. Because that's the sole purpose of MHA, is to respond to what you need. Yes, and then you have to say it 6 times before it sinks in. It's true. That's why in the trainings, we always kind of shake it up a little bit. And there's lots of people on this training today that I've seen multiple times. That's why we always offer the same training over and over and over again. Because the first time you may hear 10%, and the next time, and definitely for young people. The peer mentoring internship partnering with Black businesses, absolutely. Now, everyone has different social distancing, but I know this summer there's going to be an extraordinary amount of rebuilding opportunities. where young people can actually be learning both economic development, small business empowerment, and construction. So again, you'd want to make sure everyone is really safe. But maybe that's a great new opportunity that literally did not exist 5 days ago. Sending this PowerPoint, yes, actually it's online right now. And so when you go to the Save Summer 2020 site, you will land, if you click on the resource page, there's a whole link to sign up for trainings, and there's a whole link that says all the training resources. They're beautifully outlined for you. And when you get the guide, you actually get Part 2's entire presentation with it too. It's available right there. And also the email that I sent you all yesterday has all of the links. If you have any trouble, call me, but we always want to make everything readily available. I'm just going to say one thing before, if you have to leave immediately, and then I'm going to go back to the questions that I haven't gotten to it yet, because it's important for me that you leave this call today. I know it's just all hyped up, but I kind of want to bring it down to like my focus on you, is that I truly, truly hope that today's session not only helped you want to achieve your dream of being a summer superhero, which was before that, but I also want you to know that we are giving you the platform and the opportunity to allow young people to manifest all of their passion, but all of their anxiety and all of their trauma in ways that could become powerful leaders in their community in just 6 weeks. So you have been given kind of an unprecedented flexibility this summer to also lead with your own heart and your own mind for what your young people need. So I just hope this gave you that sense of freedom and opportunity. And I also want you to know that you are just truly loved by our MHA community, and that we are absolutely here for you. Day or night. I've actually, when I say 24/7, someone called me at midnight and I was there. If you were feeling alone before today or feeling isolated, I want you to know that our community is behind you and that I'm here for you. And I truly hope that you're able to leave this afternoon with a sense of just kind of inspiration and empowerment. You're also probably totally exhausted. And partly why we do these on Fridays is that we don't want anything to interrupt the flow that you had for feeling loved today. And again, if you want us to respond, if you want us to do anything you want, we've actually been having funders coming to us, and we said we're only responding to needs that our partners in our community want. So if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, we are here to listen to you through this time. And I just want to say I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're coming back for the afternoon, maybe take a little stroll outside, get yourself some lunch, treat yourself well, maybe take a little nap if that's your thing. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. We'll just go a little bit deeper into the plan. Great, I'm seeing working with 1st and 6th graders who find this to be true. Yes, learning a lot. It's actually, I'll go back to the website here. It's savesummer2020.org. It's actually a community site. It's broadened out for everybody, not just MHA tools. If you have resources, but savesummer2020.org. And I sent you multiple links if you signed up. If you signed up after 3 p.m. yesterday, you are going to get an email this afternoon, probably around 2:30, that has all of the links in it for you. It's very sweet, Margaret. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for saying that. I'm going to go back up here. Got the PowerPoint. For graphic design programs, you know, Photoshop or Adobe has free programs. I would almost absolutely think that they do. I know for a while they were providing free access to professionals. I can only imagine that they're actually offering that. But we can actually look into that and post that on our website. I'm going to write myself a little note on that. But I will want to say, I encourage everybody. I mean, I'm kind of an audacious, I should say that I think people who are privileged should give out their resources right now to people in this moment. So I would not hesitate to call somebody and say, I know that you're watching what's happening in the news right now, and I know you want to do everything you can to help Black and brown young people in our city. Would you be willing to donate this? If they say no, let's be honest, they're going to be seen as total jerks. So this is your moment to ask for every single thing donated free that you've ever wanted. You can quote me on that. If you want me to call for you, I promise you, I'm happy to do it. That's usually my job, is pushing on white privilege. Making calls for use. Yep, so I'm checking out here, making sure we got all of our ideas covered here. Got the PowerPoint. Peer mentoring, not a lot of questions. And just to say, if you have tons of questions later, that's why I'm focusing on coaching so much. And just so you know, we're going to be providing Q&A and support all summer long. We know that when programs start, so many unknown things are going to come up, and that's why we're going to have a support squad this summer dedicated just for you. All of us are planning our calendars, and we're bringing in different kinds of skills. So if you fill out a little form, you can tell me again exactly what skills you want. But again, I'm going to stay on the call. I'm going to probably crank up a little bit of the music. I'm going to still monitor the chat and just to have a little relaxation here. But our official part one is over. You're welcome to stay on and listen to some music. Again, I'm going to pull up the chat. And I always wait in the room until everybody goes because I don't like to shut the door on anybody. And if you are just having the epiphany that you want to come to part two, the registration is wide open. But you do need to register to get access to it. But again, on savesummer2020.org, you're happy to register at any time between now and then. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for all the love. It's also, I got so nervous today to lead this, and I'm just so happy that you're feeling like it was a good use of your time. Perfect song, Forever and Ever, You'll Stay in Our Heart.